Good day, everyone. Last meeting, we talked about the pedagogical content knowledge, which basically refers to what and how of teaching. Today, we will be discussing the components of pedagogical content knowledge for science teaching. I am your discussant, Laika Emma Chansa. What shall I do with my students to help them understand this science concept? What materials are there to help me? What are my students likely to already know and what will be difficult for them? How shall I evaluate my student have learned? These questions are common for every teacher and central to describing the knowledge that distinguishes a teacher from a subject matter specialist. That knowledge is described by the concept known as pedagogical content knowledge. Pedagogical content knowledge described as the transformation of several types of knowledge for teaching, including subject matter knowledge, and that as such it represents a unique domain of teacher knowledge. This model presents of the relationships among the domains of teacher knowledge that primarily has been informed by the work of Grossman. The shaded box in the figure designate the major domains of the knowledge for teaching, while the lines that link the domains of knowledge illustrate the relationship between pedagogical content knowledge and the other domains of knowledge for teaching. The terms on the line and the arrows at the ends of the lines describe the nature and the direction of each relationship. Arrows at each end of the line indicate a reciprocal relationship between domains. The figure is intended to depict that pedagogical content knowledge is the result of a transformation of knowledge of subject matter, pedagogy, and context, but that the resulting knowledge can spur development of the base knowledge domains in turn. And now, let's talk about the components of pedagogical content knowledge for science teaching by Magnusson and other researchers. So, building upon the work of Grossman and Tamir, they conceptualized pedagogical content knowledge as consisting of 5 components, which are the orientations towards science teaching, knowledge and beliefs about science curriculum, knowledge and beliefs about students' understanding of specific science topics, knowledge and beliefs about assessment in science, and knowledge and beliefs about instructional strategies for science teaching. Orientations toward teaching science is the first component of pedagogical content knowledge. It refers to teachers' knowledge and beliefs about the purposes and goals for teaching science at a particular grade level. Orientations represent a general way of viewing or conceptualizing science teaching. Orientations toward teaching science that have been identified in the literature are shown in Tables 1 and 2. Table 1 shows the goals of different orientations to teaching science, while the Table 2 presents the nature of instruction related with different orientations to teaching science. There are different orientations to teaching science, which are the process, academic rigor, didactic, conceptual change, activity-driven, discovery, project-based science, inquiry, and guided inquiry. Examples of sources for knowledge of goals and objectives include national or state-level documents that outline frameworks for guiding decision-making with respect to science curriculum and instruction. Effective science teachers are knowledgeable about these documents. Knowledge of a specific curriculum program. This category consists of knowledge of the programs and materials that are relevant to teaching a particular domain of science and the specific topics within that domain. Substantial curriculum development in science education has occurred for each level of schooling over the past 30 years. So, as a result, there are typically several programs at each grade level and for each subject area about which teachers should be knowledgeable. For example, a chemistry teacher might be expected to be knowledgeable about curricula for teaching chemistry. including programs such as Chem Study and CBA or the Chemical Band Approach, which were developed in 1960s. Similarly, an elementary school teacher might be expected to be knowledgeable about elementary science study and science curriculum improvement study. Teachers' knowledge of curricula such as this would include knowledge of the general learning goals of the curriculum as well as the activities and materials to be used in meeting those goals. Another component of pedagogical content knowledge is the knowledge of students' understanding of science. This component of pedagogical content knowledge refers to the knowledge teachers must have about students in order to help them develop specific scientific knowledge. It includes two categories of knowledge. First is the requirements for learning specific science concept, and the other is areas of science that students find difficult. Knowledge of requirements for learning. This category consists of teachers' knowledge and beliefs about prerequisite knowledge for learning specific scientific knowledge, as well as their understanding of variation in students' approaches to learning as they relate to the development of knowledge within specific topic areas. Teacher knowledge of prerequisite knowledge required for students to learn a specific concept includes knowledge of the abilities and skills that students might need. For example, if a teacher's goal is to help students learn about temperature by investigating phenomena undergoing thermodynamic changes, she must know how to help students develop the understanding and skills necessary to collect and interpret temperature data. Teachers' knowledge of variation in approaches to learning includes knowing how students of differing developmental or ability levels or different learning style may vary in their approaches to learning as they relate to developing scientific understandings. Effective teachers are aware of students' differing needs and can respond appropriately. Knowledge of areas of student difficulty. This category refers to teachers' knowledge of science concepts or topics that students find difficult to learn. There are several reasons why students find learning difficult in science, and teachers should be knowledgeable about each type of difficulty. For some science topic, learning is difficult because the concepts are very abstract or they lack any connection to the student's common experiences. Other topics are difficult because instruction centers on problem solving and students do not know how to think effectively about problems and plan strategies to find solutions. A third type of difficulty students encounter when learning science involves topic areas in which their prior knowledge is contrary to the target scientific concepts. Teachers should be aware of those difficulties in order for them to help their students. Another component of pedagogical content knowledge is the knowledge of assessment in science. It consists of two categories: knowledge of dimensions of science learning that are important to assess, and knowledge of the methods by which that learning can be assessed. Knowledge of dimensions of science learning to assess. This category refers to teachers' knowledge of the aspects of students' learning that are important to assess within a particular unit of study. Effective teachers should know what dimensions or aspect of the dimension of scientific literacy should be assessed in a particular unit. As an example, it is more difficult to empirically investigate the solar system than weather. So as a result, an effective teacher would plan to assess students' understanding regarding the planning and conduct of empirical investigation during the study of weather by having an actually carry out such investigation, and she would plan to utilize the different method of assessment during the study of solar system. This illustration brings us to the other category of the teacher knowledge of assessment. Knowledge of method of assessment. Knowledge of methods of assessment. This category of pedagogical content knowledge refers to teachers' knowledge of the ways that might be employed to assess the specific aspect of students' learning that are important to a particular unit of study. There are a number of methods of assessment, some of which are more appropriate for assessing some aspect of student learning than others. For example, students' conceptual understanding may be adequately assessed by written tests, whereas their understanding of scientific investigation may require assessment through a laboratory practical examination or laboratory notebook. Teachers' knowledge of methods of assessment includes knowledge of scientific instruments or procedures, approaches, or activities that can be used during a particular unit of study to assess important dimensions of science learning, as well as the advantages and disadvantages associated with employing a particular assessment device or technique. And the last component of pedagogical content knowledge is the knowledge of instructional strategies. Teachers' knowledge of instructional strategies component of pedagogical content knowledge is comprised of two categories: knowledge of subject-specific strategies and knowledge of topic-specific strategies. Strategies in these categories differ with respect to their scope. Subject-specific strategies are broadly applicable. They are specific to teaching science as opposed to the other subjects. Topic-specific strategies are much narrower in scope. They apply to teaching particular topics within a domain of science. Knowledge of subject-specific strategies. Strategies included in this category represent general approaches to overall schemes for enacting science instruction. Teachers' knowledge of subject-specific strategies is related to the orientation to teaching science component of pedagogical content knowledge in that there are general approaches to science instruction that are consistent with the goals of particular orientation. A number of subject-specific strategies have been developed in science education, many of them consisting of a 3 or 4-phase instructional sequence. Perhaps the best known of the subject-specific strategies is the learning cycle, a 3-phase instructional strategy consisting of exploration, term introduction, and concept application. The learning cycle has been used for discovery and inquiry-oriented instruction, as well as conceptual change-oriented instruction. Teachers' knowledge of subject-specific strategies for science teaching consists of the ability to describe and demonstrate a strategy and its phases. Knowledge of topic-specific strategies. This category under the instructional strategies of pedagogical content knowledge refers to teachers' knowledge of specific strategies that are useful for helping students comprehend a specific science concept. There are two categories of this type of knowledge: the representations and activities. Topic-specific representations. This category refers to teachers' knowledge of ways to represent specific concepts or principles in order to facilitate students' learning, as well as knowledge of relative strengths and weaknesses of particular presentations. It also includes in this category a teacher's ability to invent representation to aid students in developing understanding of a specific concept or relationships. Representation can be illustrations, examples, models, or analogies. An effective teacher must judge whether or when a representation will be useful to support and extend the comprehension of students in a particular teaching situation. Another category is the topic-specific activities. This category refers to knowledge of the activities that can be used to help students comprehend specific concepts or relationships. For examples, problems, demonstration, simulation, investigation, or experiment. Pedagogical content knowledge of this type also includes teachers' knowledge of the conceptual power of a particular activity. That is, the extent to which an activity presents, signals, or clarifies important information about a specific concept or relationship. Those are the components of pedagogical content knowledge for science teaching by Magnusson and other researchers.